Okay. Good morning and welcome. Thank you so much for joining us for our January coffee talk with Counselor Connect. We are really excited to be hosting a couple people from the Department of Education today. We know we are talking about an extremely important and hot topic, and lots of questions are out there from the field. So we're really glad to be joined today so that we can get just an update on what the latest and greatest is regarding the diploma changes, have some time to have some Q&A, and then also maybe at the end, we'll have the opportunity to have people share any resources that maybe you have already developed or you're working on that might be helpful to other people on the call. So my name is Amanda Callahan. I coordinate Counselor Connect, and I am joined by Flora Jones, who is the Director of Student Pathways at the Department of Education, and Ron Sandlin is the Deputy Chief Strategy Officer. So thank you for joining us, both of you. I'm not going to waste any more time, and I'm just going to hand it off to you. So thanks for being here.
Yeah, thanks, Amanda, and thanks everyone for taking the time out of their day to join us. I think it'll be pretty clean, Amanda. Flora and I are gonna popcorn back and forth each slide. So as soon as I kick it to Flora, that'll be a signal to go to the next slide, and then the same goes the other way. So we'll provide a lay of the land here. We're going to spend a little bit of time facilitating, just allowing each of us to connect to this policy, because with as big of a policy as we've adopted with the new graduation requirements, there are endless questions. And for us, one of the key principles of the policy is to provide flexibility to empower schools to create personalized, relevant educational experiences that prepare all students for post-secondary success. And if we can get on the same page and put faces to this policy, we can, I think, kind of create a shared understanding of the types of things we would approve or the types of things that we support, and empower you all to answer some of your own questions. So we're going to spend a little bit of time just trying to connect this policy to your schools, your classrooms, your kids. Then we're going to jump into some of the key shifts throughout the process in the final diploma requirements, kind of the FAQs, if you will, that we've been getting. We'll just walk through a handful of those preemptively, and then talk about some of the resources that we've planned to develop, and then jump right into questions and answers. And again, going back to where we'll start this conversation, we're not going to have answers for everything. And so what we're going to have to do is create a shared understanding of what our goal is with the new graduation requirements and what we're trying to accomplish, so that each and every one of you can act unilaterally and proactively, with the confidence that you're in lockstep with the department, with the state of Indiana. Because this is not a compliance-driven exercise. This is not a checklist-driven exercise. We hope this is empowering and promotes flexibility in ways that in the past may not have existed. So with that, do quick introductions. Ron Sandlin, Deputy Chief Strategy Officer with the Department of Education. Been with the state for over a decade, on and off, since 2011, and have had the privilege of working since March of 2024, just deeply on this project, and then simultaneously leading our accountability work, our school accountability work, which we are intentionally integrating the two together, to again create this ecosystem of flexibility and student-centered decision-making, ideally in a way that Indiana has never provided in the past. So Flora, do you want to introduce yourself briefly?
Thanks, Ron. Before I introduce myself, seems to be some technology problems, and I don't know if Amanda is reading in the chat that people cannot hear. So if you all are addressing that from a tech perspective,
Hello.
That's great.
And just to add, Marty just put this in the chat. You might want to check your sound. I think most people can hear. So it might be something with your computer. We are also recording this, and we will send it out in a few days or early next week too. So for some reason you can't get access. Thanks.
Thanks, Amanda. I appreciate that. So good afternoon, I'm Flora Jones, Director of Student Pathways for the Indiana Department of Education. Many of you have probably had communication with me. We are here today to just have a conversation. It's a coffee talk. So when I think of coffee talk, I think of just relaxing and having a dialogue, collaboration between colleagues on a subject matter. And so today, this is what we're here for, to just have a conversation. We may not have all the answers, and that's okay. And you may not have all the answers in your school or your school district, and that's still okay. We're building this plane day by day, and we're making it the best possible plane that can be flown. So with that being said, I oversee work-based learning as well as graduation pathways, and I'm learning as well. So let's get in here together and let's have a great conversation today, and let's relax and enjoy each other.
Excellent.
So when we think about why do we need to rethink high school, I know this question has come up and we've heard various educators speak to this specific slide. When we think about our Hoosiers, many students have the aspiration to attend college, post-secondary. And with that design in mind, the pursuit of these graduation requirements, which are rigorous, we seem to lose the relevance and connection for students as illustrated by our post-secondary persistence data. While completion rates are up, enrollment rates are on the decline. Think about the students that you serve. How many aspire to go to college, to the university, and it doesn't materialize? Put a face to that student. What work did you put in to support that student to gain admission into a college or university? What happened when that student did not persist or did not meet the requirements? Those are things that you have to start looking at. What efforts did I put into that student? And how can we continue to improve the work that we're doing each day? The data says that 76% of Hoosier High School graduates say they intend to go on to some form of higher learning. 53% actually do. And of these students, 24% who enroll in a 2-year college or university graduate on time. 51% who enroll in a 4-year college or university graduate on time. And you ask the question, why do we need to rethink high school? We need to rethink high school so that we can meet the needs of each student individually. Not collectively so much, but individually, every student should be on a pathway, and we should be able to support them to matriculate to post-secondary success. Next slide, please.
Yeah, Flora, and it's really interesting. It makes me wonder about that 76% number, you know, and the aspirational versus the attainment gap. And I kind of see two different reactions there, right? The first is, oh my goodness, we're not setting our kids up for success for the things that they want to do. And so we need to somehow make sure that all kids are prepared to go to college because that's what they want to do. And that's one way to look at it, right? Change the support so that we can increase attainment to match the aspirations. I think another way to look at it, and I think all of us know a student who's in this seat, which is our entire system is set up. The Core 40 was designed to be a college preparation curriculum and a college preparation diploma. In law, that was a requirement. And how many of those 76% say they want to persist to college because that's what the system tells them to do? And so school officials, like you mentioned, Flora, work alongside them, try to help them, and they end up struggling with some of those advanced courses and really lose interest because that's really not their story and it's not their journey. I can think of K-Wan, who I actually taught in 6th grade, and was an amazing student and went on to high school and struggled. And his family found me later on and said, I actually want to go to the military, Mr. Sandlin. Like, what can I do? At this point, I was working at the department. I hadn't been in touch with the kid in, 6 years. And his family reached out to me because the educational opportunities he was getting weren't aligning to what his aspirations were. K1's now 28, lives in Japan, from a low-income family in Indianapolis, single mom, has lived in Italy, Korea, and Japan, has seen more of this world than I'll probably see in my lifetime. But he couldn't get that from his school. And I think the really important point here is I'm not sure that the schools aren't working incredibly hard to help K1. And I think our data on this slide tell that story very clearly. Indiana ranks number one in the percentage of students completing high school with college credits. Right? That is not by accident. That is intentional work by educators across the state to ensure students have access, that students are prepared. But at the end of the day, there seems to be some tension in our system where they're getting dual credits, but they're not actually completing a credential. And we know that 58% of Indiana jobs are going to require some education beyond high school, but not a four-year college or a bachelor's degree. Yet we have graduation requirements in the core 40 that are designed intentionally, and I think that's really important for us to point out. The law said create graduation requirements that ensure all Hoosier graduates are prepared to enter college. And we think that there's kind of a relevance gap that's emerging. We think aspiration and attainment, we can provide more support to reach the aspirations, or we can redesign and create flexibility in our system so that students feel confident to pursue the things that they want to pursue and that are going to prepare them for success after post-secondary, like K1, who will come back to the States when his,
right. And that's where the shift is. That's where the shift is. Absolutely.
Yeah. K1, who will come back to the States when he's finished his service as an expert electrician, employable probably anywhere in the state of Indiana, making more money than anybody in his family has ever made. And again, K1 had to go outside of his school because the system that his school was operating in was pushing them and pushing K1 down a universal track, which was go to college. And so that's what we're trying to unpack. And but we're trying to unpack it in a way that says every kid might not go to college, but every kid will be prepared for post-secondary success. And so we're trying to define what that means for employment, what that means for enlistment. In a way that doesn't lower the bar for any students and ensures that every student is successful. And so I hope you're thinking about a kid in your school. And as you think about, well, what does this mean in the grad requirements? What does this mean in the grad requirements? What it's always going to come back to is, how do we make sure that student is pursuing aspirations that are relevant to them and that are going to set them up for success after high school? If the answer to those questions is yes, they are pursuing something relevant to them, and yes, it's going to meet a bar that sets them up for success after high school, there's a good chance that the state of Indiana is going to support those actions and those activities. So Flora, you can go to the next slide, Amanda.
Someone asked a question, I just want to throw it out there. They said, well, don't we already do this?
Yeah, I can address, I think, so maybe, as you know, having been around for as long as I have, I was at the State Board of Education when the graduation pathways were adopted. We didn't touch box one, right? So we added additional ways for students to earn a graduation qualifying event, if you will. So they no longer just had to pass the ECA or the I-Step 10, they could do all of these other things, but we didn't actually change the core 40 requirements. So we had students that might have been pursuing a CTE credential, but struggling to pass Algebra 2, right? When what would actually be more beneficial for that student is to have more time to complete the credential, complete it at a level that's going to earn them dual credits, so go beyond the minimum, right? So instead of just a concentrator, actually go beyond the concentrator status to complete the credential, and get some work-based learning experience. So yes, graduation pathways expanded what students could do in addition to the diploma requirements, but the graduation pathways did not touch the diploma requirements. And what we've seen emerge is actually a tension. If you're on the SAT graduation pathways track and you're going to pass the SAT to graduate, the diploma requirements align with you perfectly. But what we're seeing, and it's evidence in the data with, I forgot the percentage, but being number one in the country on students graduating with college credit and students graduating with 13.5 credits, but not completing credentials, what that's signaling to us and what we're hearing across the state is that the diploma requirements for example, algebra 2, chemistry, and physics, which might not be aligned to the student's actual credential pathway, is getting in the way. And schools, 9 times out of 10, are going to choose, let's get the kid a high school diploma before they leave, because if they don't get that, they're really not set up for success. And what we're trying to do is we're trying to acknowledge that tension and accommodate on the diploma side so that we can more effectively implement those pathways. So I think what we're trying to do is make the pathways come to life even more than they have already been able to, given that tension. That was a really long way to say yes, but.
Absolutely correct. So when we do think about the credentials, we are pushing students in that direction who have the aspiration and the desire, the strengths and the interests to go into a employment setting upon graduation. Ron brought up a story, and I can just think back to when I was in school and I graduated, and I knew that I was going to college. There was no question about it. My parents said, "You're going to college." No one ever asked me, did I want to go to college? I just knew I was going. And 3 changes in my major later, my dad said, "Okay, you're going to have to stick with this third one." So I spent a lot of money trying to find out who I was while pursuing my college degree at Ball State. Yes, I graduated from college. Yes, I had a career, but my career did not align with my completion at Ball State University. So had I had the opportunities that we are now defining for students in pre-K through the 8th grade, through exploration, engagement, and experiences, our students now are more prepared upon graduation after the grand walk across the stage. They are more prepared for post-secondary success. And this is what we want to continue to do, is prepare our students. And so we have students who say, well, they want the military, but to come in the end of the road and find out that they don't meet the requirements. They don't meet the eligibility. So we have to prepare our students for the military. How do we prepare them? By exposing them to opportunities through our LCPs, where we have created a locally created pathway that is supporting students in JROTC. So we're providing opportunities for students to be prepared upon graduation. We're trying to eliminate the gaps that Ron keeps mentioning that we have through aspiration and attainment. So we want to eliminate those gaps by providing the supports and the services that are needed for our students. Next slide, please.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of conversations about financial aid and supporting students financially in college. Certainly a challenge. I think I think we'd be hard pressed to find enough data to justify the completion and enrollment rates that we saw on the first slide because of financial barriers. So that is not to understate that those challenges as a first generation college student who received a Pell Grant to go to school. Like, I get it. And I think we have work to do in that space. I think we would be hard pressed to justify the data that we saw on slide 1 as even predominantly a financial aid question. And moreover, when we think about career coaching and counseling for students, there are different paths into post-secondary success. When I say that, specifically higher ed, where students can accommodate for financial limitations. And those are all parts of these conversations. Lastly, there was a comment about completing the pathway puts stress on scheduling. And I think we hear that loud and clear. And our hypothesis, right? And it's not only a hypothesis because we've talked to a lot of folks, is that tension largely exists between meeting Core 40 requirements and checking boxes and pursuing relevant pathway aligned coursework. And so through this, that's literally our goal, is to eliminate that tension, is to say, instead of do I get this kid in Algebra 2 over the summer for the 3rd time? Or are we willing to accept a math course that's more aligned to that student's pathway that they're going to be more successful in, so that they can actually complete the credential? Because we know that employers and consumers in the post-secondary world, they care about the credential, not that the kid took 3 high school credits. They care about the skills the student earned, but that credential really signals to the employer a lot more than a series of high school credits on a transcript. And so we're trying to create space for students to actually complete the things that matter the most, which would be those full pathways. And lastly, on the kind of why conversation, and I know that folks are experiencing this throughout the state, but engagement has become a significant issue. And obviously, COVID played a critical role here. COVID disrupted what education was, what the routines were for these students in a way that probably will never happen again. And our ability to re-engage students, especially students that are in high school, and make sure that they walk across that stage with a clear plan and the skills necessary to be successful after high school, it's really inhibited our ability to do that. And so we also believe that by creating flexibility within the graduation requirements, we can simultaneously create more engaging and relevant educational experiences that start to address some of these data. And again, chronic absenteeism in and of itself is not the problem. Chronic absenteeism is a symptom of the problem. And our work, hopefully, and is designed to create more relevant educational experiences for students. So again, as you think about those students in your building, and can we do this or can we do that? The big questions that you ask yourself is, does this create a more relevant educational opportunity for my kid? And does it push them down a pathway that's going to prepare them for post-secondary success, which means developing those skills that we talked about earlier: communication, work ethic, critical thinking, and pursuing a credential of value, right? So that sequence of courses or dual credits that's going to actually terminate in a stackable credential for those students.
Ron, as we go through this, I think it was Amy who said she didn't mean to be rude, and I will read her comment. Please don't take this wrong, but we only have an hour here. This is here. We can read the whys. We need the details and a chance to ask questions now. So, Amy, I hear what you're saying, but there are others who maybe don't understand the why, or they need to know the why. And so that's why we wanted to start out with the why, because it's more than a checklist. It's more than saying Johnny met this requirement, let's move on to Sally, but ensuring that Johnny is receiving the support that is necessary for post-secondary success. So understanding the why and being able to attach it to a student's face is so important. And so that is why we led with this. We understand there will be many, many questions. You're asking, when will the companion guide be out? There's a lot of questions with timelines attached that we today cannot give you a timeline, but we are ensuring you that we are working on the guidance and the forms and documents that you will need. We're interested in knowing who has already started to prepare documents. So those are things that we're going to want to learn from you as well today. So we will try and make this as quickly as possible and smoothly as possible so that we can get to some of the questions. Ron, if you want to take
Flora,
that.
yeah, because I think the key here is I need you to be able to answer your own questions, right? Because with this much flexibility, we are not going to have an answer for every single community, right? There are just some technical questions. Which courses count, right? We have that information out. We'll get that to you. But when it boils down to it, we need to empower each and every one of you to kind of work within a much larger purpose and a much larger why, and then be able to justify your actions, right? By saying, okay, you told me aligned to post-secondary pathways, setting kids up for post-secondary success. Here's the general information you've put out to help me define that. So here's the action I took. And so that's why we're going to, this isn't about, the goal here is not to convince you that this is a good idea. I hope you believe that. If you don't, I'm not going to convince you. The goal here is to empower you with a high level context so that you can unilaterally make decisions. Because there are only so many of us. We rely heavily on you. And I don't know the answer in every single community. And so just to be super clear, this conversation is about empowering you all to make decisions underneath an umbrella of kind of principled expectations. And then kind of go from there. And so that's why we're starting here, because it's about empowerment. Please know this isn't a sales pitch, because either you're all in or you'll get there eventually, but you're not going to do it just because I said it. And I definitely get that. So yeah.
Oh, thanks. So the high school experience of the future, we know that it is here, based on enrollment, employment, and enlistment leading to service, giving equal playing time to each one of those areas, as opposed to all of our focus being on one or the other. Go ahead, Amanda. Thank you. There were key themes in our stakeholder feedback, and that was ensuring that students have options to personalize and update their graduation plan to align with their unique interests and goals, elevating the importance of student choice, ensuring work-based learning is accessible to more students, flexible options in terms of multiple experiences that are paid, unpaid, on-site, or simulated, and providing sufficient resources to support successful implementation. Are all of these things a reality? Absolutely. And we are working as a work-based learning team in conjunction with the Commission for Higher Ed. We have been working for the past, I'd say, 5 months or so, working diligently to ensure that these opportunities are available for our students and to be able to develop guidance that will support the work that you do each day. Next slide,
And I want to
please.
I want to hit something that was in the chat about the general diploma to allow flexibility for CTE. I think that makes sense. I think the wondering I have about that when I view the data is that actually preparing students to succeed, right? There was 2 components. Is it contributing to a student's relevant, personalized pathway? That plan probably checks that box. The data I've seen would suggest that it does not check box 2. Our students that are receiving general diplomas are not going on at any rate that would be similar or comparable to the core 40 of being successful. And the success rate on the core 40, as you saw early on, is incredibly low as well. So I think one of the things that we're grappling with here, and I do appreciate that, because that is the essence of what we're talking about: flexibility on the diploma so we can pursue relevant pathways. I think the plan to just put students on the general and then get them to complete the CTE sequence, because that flexibility is there, actually isn't meeting our second criteria. It's not setting students up for success after high school. It might be setting your students up, but as a policy, as a public policy statewide, the data show that's not the trajectory that is going to meet both criteria in there. And so that's why we come in with our seals. So if you want to go, we'll jump into the seals briefly, and then I'll open it up for questions just to be responsive to the group. If you want to skip through to slide 13. Obviously, you'll see, and you've seen the side-by-side, fundamental changes in the required courses for the base diploma. And then the enrollment seal is basically going to be the core 40 with some additional requirements. And so we still captured that college prep curriculum. But I love this example of the general diploma. So the only option for any student who wasn't on that enrollment path was to put them on the general diploma path and get them a CTE pathway. And what we've determined based on conversations with employers, schools, community leaders, all of those people, is that that's actually not rigorous enough to set students up for success, right? It's not a universal expectation for everyone, other than everyone is set up to be successful after high school. So that's why when you get into the employment seal, you see the introduction of work-based learning, right? That's what's distinguishing that general diploma CTE pathway with where we want to go in the future, because the flexibility that exists in the base diploma doesn't align completely with the general diploma, but it's pretty close, right? But we know that that is not enough to get a kid there. And that's why the employment seal introduces things like work-based learning and asks schools to work with those placements to verify the students' skills for communication and collaboration. So I think that's such a great example, right, of relevant pathway, preparing students for post-secondary. And our current approach to that is falling short based on the data, right? Statewide, your school might be doing great things. And so that's where the seals come in, is to provide that flexibility on the diploma side, but then say if the student's not on a college track, they can't just get the CTE credential. That's not enough. We have to build those skills and create those experiences through work-based learning. And then you can see the enlistment to serve seal as well, where you have the introduction of other kind of benchmarks students will hit along the way to, again, make sure that schools have an option that's both relevant and personalized, but rigorous enough to ensure that all students who complete it are prepared for post-secondary success. And we've just broadened that definition of post-secondary success. No longer is it go to college and graduate in 4 years, right? That is the definition for some students. But for many other students, it's a different definition. And we all know who they are. We all know the student who has struggled to earn a core 40 and on their way lost that J factor, lost the joy in their eye. And none of us enjoyed that experience, pushing a kid in a direction that the student did not want to go because Indiana's rigid graduation requirements made them do so in order to earn a diploma. And so our goal here is that you no longer have to push a kid against their will, that you can find a way to support a student's aspirations and support their pathway to post-secondary success, regardless of their aspirations. So if you want to go to the next slide, we get into some details. I mean, I don't know how you want to do this, Amanda. It seems like folks really want to get questions answered. I think we're trying to answer questions as we go. If you want to skip to slide, sorry, Flora, if you want to skip to slide 21, I think that's probably the most up-to-date or the most recent release of information. If folks don't know about it, many will. I'll put these in the chat. But we did release in December proposed courses for the diploma. So as you know, there's the communication requirement, there's the world perspectives requirement that are new. In those documents, we lay out all of the courses that would be eligible for each of those requirements. We are seeking feedback through January 31st. I provided a link to the feedback form if you would like to provide that as well. So if you're planning on scheduling going into this second semester, if you're scheduling your 8th grade students going into 9th grade, this document will provide you access to all of the courses that we anticipate to count towards each section. Within each one, there's a caveat that says courses under consideration. I heard yesterday, they were like, we were surprised that course is being considered for the chopping block. Courses under consideration is not suggestive that the course is being cut. It is just a course that may have counted for something that doesn't exist in the new diploma, or a course that was impacted because of the changes in the diploma. So we need to hear from you on where you think or whether you think that should count for certain things. And so those courses under consideration is really kind of where we want the feedback. All of the courses that are listed as eligible right now will not change. Those are locked in. So if you need to get started on scheduling, you can use this document to inform those course decisions for your 9th graders and beyond. Obviously, you're scheduling out a 4-year trajectory. And then the companion guide is we're working on releasing that as soon as we finalize this list. So do we want to try to just do Q&A, Amanda? Do you want to try to, maybe there's a lot of questions in the thing. Do you want to try to facilitate, or maybe Flora and I can bounce back and forth? Flora can pick one and answer it, and then I can prepare while she's answering.
Sure, that's completely fine. I'm scrolling up in my chat to see what maybe the first question was that wasn't answered.
Question while you're looking, Amanda, was about I think it was Jessica asked, when will work-based learning guidance be provided? And we know that this is going to be critical for all of our schools. And we are working, as I said earlier, with the commission to develop the guidance and documents. We've put a lot of work into it, and we want to roll that out, but we are being very careful on our rollout date so that we'll be able to provide you with the most up-to-date information based on our current advisory councils that we work with work-based learning, from our educational advisory council to our employer advisory council, as well as intermediaries. So we are working with various groups to ensure that we are giving you the best information. But we have also had school districts who have started this work and have shared with us some of their guidance and documents that they use. So if you do have anything that you would like to share, feel free to share that with us as we are completing our guidance. Our hopes is that we will be sharing information within the next several months out to you on the guidance. But we know that our students who are currently in the 8th grade will not be doing a work-based learning experience. So we know that we do have time. So when you think about it, it's that class, our current 8th graders, they will not be doing any work-based learning this year. So we do have time to provide you with the ultimate guidance from work-based learning experiences and opportunities.
And I would also add that we have a lot of guidance about work-based learning out through CTE. And
Yes.
so while we expect opportunities to expand as the work-based learning expectation expands beyond students with that are specifically on a CTE pathway and are completing a capstone, there is significant guidance out on work-based learning currently. And I would say that we are certainly not going to get more strict with how we approach work-based learning in the state of Indiana as we expand the footprint of work-based learning. And so that's where I think, going back to how we started this conversation, we want to empower you all to make decisions. There's work-based learning documents out there. Consult those, think about the purpose of this work, and get to work. I'm sure if you do that, you will fall within the guidelines of where we want to go. I'm very confident. And I think that as Flora mentioned, when it comes to expanding work-based learning to the scale that we hope and we envision, the guidance will be provided for you to do that. But at this point, we don't anticipate large swaths of students shifting into work-based learning next year. And so as such, using the existing framework for work-based learning, I think is our recommendation.
Okay, I'm going to kind of start down and move up. I guess that's the easiest. As comments come in, it kind of pushes them up. Let's see. Brittany asked about if somebody's graduating in December, but in their same cohort, do they still have to earn a seal? Somebody did respond to say prior to 8 semesters, they must earn a seal. So just confirming if that's accurate, we'll move on. Are the documents with the seals available to pull up on the website?
I'm posting those right now.
Awesome, thank you. And then this is from Kelly. Does this mean the current work-based learning contracts portfolio will change?
Yeah, so the work agreements, I assume that's what they're talking about. Great example. It will not get more strict than the current requirements. And the department will put out templates that schools may use to ensure that the work-based learning experiences they've created for students fall within the guidelines. One change you can anticipate is if you look at the SEAL requirements, the verification of communication, work ethic, those requirements are only associated with a SEAL where there's a work-based learning requirement. And that's intentional because ideally, while it's not required, ideally the student is demonstrating those skills while they're in the work-based learning placement. So what we're going to do is we'll build templates that not only capture all of the minimum requirements for a work-based learning agreement, it'll also provide frameworks for the employer or for the host to document and validate those skills. That way the schools have the documentation that the students met those SEAL requirements, kind of as a part of the work-based learning experience. So to be super clear, currently the current agreements will absolutely be sufficient. Expect more examples and more templates that will change to accommodate for some of the requirements in the new SEALs, but none of them will be mandated, and what has been going on historically will be sufficient.
Okay, is it true that students in the classes of 26, 27, and 28 may only use the new diploma for graduation if they earn a SEAL?
Yes.
Okay.
And there's an and there. Read the law very carefully. They also have to have a minimum number, or excuse me, read the rule very carefully. They have to have a minimum number of credits. So what I'm going to do, this is long. I'm going to post that section of the rule in the chat. It's long. So if it bothers you, just delete it if you can. But I recommend you just copy and paste it right out of there, and you can see all the requirements for early graduates.
The general diploma is still an option. question.
Moving forward, there's one diploma. It's the Indiana diploma. And then there's a diploma with seals, honors, and plus. So there is not a general diploma. The alternate diploma was not touched. It remains the same. There has been no changes to the alternate diploma, but we will have one diploma. So the general diploma will not exist.
Beginning with the class of 2029.
Correct,
Yeah.
correct.
Yeah.
Okay. Somebody asked kind of for maybe suggestions. We're a small rural school with not a lot of industry and or businesses. I'm concerned about the work-based learning and how we are actually going to get students to be able to obtain relevant experiences. If anybody has any suggestions or in a similar situation, please, you can add those into the chat if you have any suggestions. I also, in a few slides, I have linked a Google Doc where anybody should be able to edit into that Google Doc to add any resources maybe you've already created. I did include a couple of resources that have been shared via Counselor Talk. I know somebody just posted an 8th grade parent night presentation, so I linked that in. And then there's a couple other resources there. But if you have something you're planning or you've created that might be useful to other people on the call, please feel free to add that there.
And in regards to the question, there are a lot of rural school districts who have completely knocked it out of the park. They have simulated, they have school-based enterprises that they support their ecosystem within their community, and they are selling. What I would do, if you are one of those school districts, put it in the chat. And if you're not, reach out to me. I will be more than happy to share some of our exemplar school districts that are rural, that have limited employment engagement, but they are making it happen in their schools. I have one school district that at the last 2 periods of the day is a work-based learning opportunity for their students who are juniors and seniors. So they're getting those experiences. One of the examples is that they have 6 or 7 bays of kitchen where they actually prepare food, freeze it, and then on Fridays, the community comes in, purchases the food, and then they're selling it. So they're building the ecosystem within their community. They're engaging with families, and they're also learning a skill. So there are a lot of things that you can do within your school if you don't have the engagement of employers within your school community. So there's a lot of things that's happening. If you're one of those school districts, please share it. Invite them to come. We will be sharing exemplar examples in our guidance with work-based learning as well.
Great.
Yeah, and I wanted to build on that just briefly to say, it's not easy, right? So if you're sitting there worried, we see you and we hear you. And while those programs exist, many of them started years ago, right, Flora, right? They didn't turn them up last year because we started talking about rethinking high school. And I think that's really important that you hear from us, that we hear you, we see you, we validate you. We are not, our response is not get on board, right? It is, we want to accommodate and help you build out opportunities. And so we will intentionally, and one of the examples Dr. Jenner provided was a virtual work-based learning experience for a student. She presented that at the State Board of Education, as well as what Flora mentioned, school-based enterprises. And I know that you can't get started with confidence yet because that's the guidance that we're getting out. The guidance for work-based learning that has historically led with the CTE space might not fit your environment for a lot of reasons, access being a main one. But I want to reassure you that we hear you and see you. We recognize this work is hard and it will not be done overnight, but that our guidance will provide flexibility for rural schools to get students access to work-based learning in ways that make sense for your context and conditions. So thank you for your worry, right? Thank you for your concern, because it means that you want to do this in a meaningful way. And we hear you, and we're going to make sure that our guidance helps you do that.
Was anything changed on the quantitative reasoning classes needing to be taken each year?
Rebecca's answer is accurate there. If that's the one she responded to, yep.
Okay, perfect.
Thanks, Rebecca.
When will we have a sheet for parents that just has the new diploma requirements instead of the comparison document?
We are working on that now.
But-
And so
Yeah,
our
yeah.
comms team is aware, so we'll be able to share that out. But feel free to slice and dice if you'd like to, just to share with parents right now, but we will be getting that out to you.
Great. In the final rule, it states public service is defined by benefiting the general public, consisting of significant selfless service and volunteer involvement. Is this possible to be aligned with the community services course?
I just received a question on this. We have public service standards, and they haven't been released yet. That's what I learned. And what I would recommend is once we get those released, you can then kind of compare, right, what students are doing in your community service course with what we've put out as the standards for this kind of new public service course. And if there's alignment there, the answer is absolutely yes. And if you want some formal endorsement of that, you can submit a non-standard course waiver. I wouldn't put a ton of work into it, and get that formally endorsed so you have kind of written documentation for that. And so my answer right now is probably, but I would put it on you once we release those standards to run that comparison and say, oh yeah, these are absolutely accomplishing the same thing for our students.
Okay, the next couple I'm seeing are regarding the work-based learning. Will the definition be revised for the SEAL requirements? Dr. Jenner's examples during her presentations were more like work experiences and not the robust work-based learning standard courses.
Has been determined, and the definition has been determined. And with that being said, now the guidance is being implemented within the committees so that we can share that with you. But we are not looking at a new rule. We're not looking at a new definition. We've already updated our definition to align with the rule. So we are on point in that aspect. We will be able to share with you guidance related to the requirements for the work-based learning experiences, which we have deemed high quality experiences. And as Ron has stated, it goes beyond the CTE. We're looking at the broad base, and that's an academic student who has enrollment as their goal, and they're a Purdue aspirational student. Well, then what experiences can they receive that's going to align with their trajectory for graduation and post-secondary success? So those are the things that will provide guidance and exemplar examples for you. So, but the rule has been set and the definition.
Okay, somebody asked about what grade level should take intro to public services.
I would say that's to be determined by the school district as to how it aligns with your scheduling, your master schedule.
And the student's pathway, right? Because that's specifically a course for the enlistment
Yes.
seal.
Okay. The communications requirement, we understand that English 10 will not suffice. So are there specific courses outlined for that?
Yeah, that's the document that I shared earlier that
Perfect.
links to our course memo, and we're collecting feedback on that. Feedback through January 31st.
Okay, Sam, you're seeing, I'm going to start scrolling back down to the bottom. If you're seeing some science questions, if you want to go ahead and jump in if you have some of those.
Yeah, I'm seeing a couple of questions. There's a question about why ICP cannot count towards the enrollment seal. Let's see. There were a couple different questions like that. For example, on the STEM science draft document, it says any additional approved science or math courses listed, science, tech, engineering, math, AP, etc. So any extra math or science courses listed will count for STEM science ?
STEM science.
And then someone followed up, I understood that any math or science class can still count as STEM credits. So if the CTE program that the students enter are not on the STEM list, can they earn 2 credits with an additional year of science or math? And then
I think there's a lot of questions, Samantha,
Yeah.
on the STEM and the math. And I know Rebecca
Yeah.
has been intentional in reaching out to Counselor Talk to share that information. I know Rebecca's on right now, And her and Michelle have worked very closely with trying to align these courses with the SEALs. So Rebecca, if you're there, if you can address those questions, that would be great.
I don't think she
there's
can.
a lot
I
of
don't think she
questions.
can unmute, Flora.
Oh, yeah. Let me.
Yeah, so
Address
let's.
it in the chat.
Oh, okay, gotcha. Yeah.
Yeah, if she will.
I think
'cause she's
generally
been-
though, yes, any science or technology or engineering or math course standalone can satisfy the STEM requirement. STEM is not a category, right? It is a super group. It consists of all of those things individually and STEM collectively. And it's intentionally designed that way. Again, going back to the purpose, everybody, earlier we heard the comment of we want to ask questions as to why. Well, this is why the why matters, right? Because STEM, that requirement was put in so that we didn't lock students into every student into taking an additional math course, because not every student on their pathway will need an additional math course. But we do want students taking additional STEM courses. What we could have done is we could have just add 2 more credits to math and science. But we intentionally said, no. We want flexibility. So the STEM is going to be a super group so that schools have the flexibility to say this student's really into science, so they're going to go deeper into the science pathway than they are math. Or this student's really into engineering and they're going down the CTE pathway for engineering, and they're going to check their STEM box that way. So again, STEM is meant to provide flexibility, not to create a new limiting category that is kind of a new category called STEM.
Okay. Sam, were there any others related to that? Or if not, there was one. What does meet attendance goal mean? Was my next question on the list here.
Yes. The best way to define that is in the rule. And so I will pull that as well and I'm struggling to paste into the chat. It's like not letting me. That's why I haven't pasted it. But as soon as I find it, I'll get it to you all. But it is in the rule. I'm not going to say go read the rule because that's why I'm here and that's why Flora's here. So I'll get you that information from the rule.
And then somebody asked about additional funds for transportation for the work-based learning. They're concerned about, whether or not there will be anything that you've heard of regarding more funds for that.
Yeah, I would say follow the legislative session. We released a transportation review that focused on transportation costs associated not just with work-based learning, but also just different aspects. So it's a topic of conversation. I think we know it's a barrier. We don't have money right now to issue, right, the department. So follow that budget session. Make sure that your folks who advocate in Indianapolis know about those limitations and how much you want to do for your kids and how this particular barrier really inhibits your ability to do that.
Going along with that, someone asked if the CSA program would be expanded to help with some of that. So I think probably your answer goes for that too, correct?
It is. And I would say for that one, really follow that conversation, because I think that that conversation is evolving in a way that is not going to result in just more money in CSAs. I think there's a conversation that's going on about the relationship between traditional CTE funding and CSAs and making it more of an efficient and accessible program for all schools and all programs. So definitely follow along that conversation this budget session. Strongly recommend. And we'll do our best to produce and share guidance as well and updates as well, because I know tuning into committee meetings is not everyone's Friday night fun time.
Okay, realizing we only have a few minutes left. I know there are a lot of questions maybe we haven't yet answered. Maybe I'll ask one more, and then any others we can send in the transcript. And if there are others that could be answered, then we can maybe follow up with that. How do we get mentorships for the enlistment seal? What's the next one?
Sorry, give me 1 second.
Yep.
Well, I can just jump in with your enlistment seal and your mentorship. Many of you have the JROTC in your building, so you have individuals there building relationships with your military partners in your ecosystem is a great way to develop mentorship and community support for the enlistment seal. So starting to
Yeah.
build those relationships is something that would be critical right now as you lead into your students in the 8th grade currently. So I would just start building those relationships, and that's how you're going to forge mentorships within that for the seal. Ron?
Well, and I will go a step further, Flora, because forging relationships is on them, right? Every single branch of the military has very interested folks in talking to students who are interested in the armed forces, and those are called recruiters. And what I would suggest is if you have a student who's or a family who's uncomfortable talking to a recruiter, then you probably have a student who shouldn't be on the enlistment seal. Right. And so there are proactive people who will help you build these mentorships. It's their job. And as Flora shared earlier, we are facing extreme shortages in our military and in armed services. And so that would be my first call, would be to your local MEPS, which is the entry processing system, which is kind of not affiliated with a branch of the military. And then I would call your local military recruiters. Every single branch of the military is going to have a recruiter that has your jurisdiction. And I assure you that they are interested in talking to and mentoring students who are pursuing enlistment in the military. But I want to reiterate, and this is really important, because we saw the ASVAB go gangbusters when we launched graduation pathways for students who were not interested in the military at all, being used as their graduation pathway requirement. Personalized and relevant was one of the 2 requirements. And again, if a family is uncomfortable talking to a recruiter, we should probably have some conversations with that family around what the enlistment seal is setting them up for after college. And if they go that path and don't enlist, they might not be set up for success in a meaningful way, in the way that we would like them to be set up for. So you don't have to build the relationships. You just have to make a call. And I guarantee they will be at your doorstep. Welcome them into your school. They're calling me nonstop, by the way. They want to come to your schools.
Right. And I will say this, Ron, that in my years in IPS working with the military, I work with more than the recruiters. And so we built a collaborative effort with some of our generals, folks who had retired. And they were ones who didn't have really any divested interest in recruiting a student, but educating. And so that was one of the key things, was educating our students, educating our staff on what was the best course of action when it comes to enlistment. So it is a learning curve for all of us. So that's why I suggested, building those relationships with your military community partners so that you can understand what the opportunities are for your students that are interested in enlistment.
Thank you both. I'm going to ask one more question to close us out, because it's been asked a few times. Any info on tracking this? Anything you want to provide there?
We are certainly working with some of our intermediaries. We are working with community partners on the tracking systems. Some of you are already involved in various platforms that have provided some guidance on tracking with the new diploma and the new requirements. So what we'd say is, who you're looking at, keep looking. If you find someone that's great, someone mentioned, I think it was Dave, mentioned that he had someone that they had looked at as far as a platform, share that with us. We are having meetings with various, from Zello to Naviance to other platforms. We're having meetings, met with Dr. Mellon with CIESC on several platforms. So folks are out there working. And so what we want to do is just be knowledgeable and be able to share out information with you regarding tracking systems. But as the state, we are looking at how we can best support the tracking of this new diploma requirements.
Thank you both again. I know it's not always easy to be in the hot seat, but you both did a great job. So we appreciate your time. There is a QR code, it looks like, on this slide for additional questions. So if there are any follow-up questions, go ahead and scan that to submit those. And then as we close out, this is that document I was referring to. If you do have resources that you've developed that might be helpful, please feel free to add those here. I did see the question about, can we have maybe some additional follow-up webinars? We are in discussions to maybe get some on the calendar in the near future. So please follow Counselor Connect, and we hopefully will be hosting some more things here in the next month or so.
Hey, Amanda, this is Marty.
Yeah.
Those two things you were just referring to, we can't see your screen right now. So if you could share your screen or put those links in the chat. Thanks.
Oh, that's interesting. Okay, it says I'm sharing my screen.
I can see it, but I don't know.
Okay, maybe it's just a problem on my end. Good. I'm glad folks can see it.
Okay, great. And then just some upcoming coffee talks here. If you want to check those out, we have a few coming up. Our next one is Celebrating School Counseling to go along with National School Counseling Week during the first week of February. So join us as we welcome some panelists there. If you do want to receive a PGP point for today's attendance, you can complete this very short evaluation here, and those will automatically be sent to your inbox. Finally, here is a snapshot of all of our upcoming events from now until mid-March. So lots going on. If you click on that link there, it will take you to more information and registration for all of these events. Last, I want to plug, we just scheduled a prepare training. Samantha Vidal and friends are going to be presenting that in April. That's a 2-day in-person workshop. So take a look at the details there. Some resources, and then finally our contact information if you have any follow-up questions for us. Thank you again for being here. We appreciate everybody's time, and we will see everybody soon. Take care.